Check this out. Today, we're going to upgrade the low-cost diesel engine in the Cushman Desperado with an electric starter kit. This unusual kit is available from wsepo.com, and I'll put a link in the description. Now, this is not a sponsored video. However, I'd just like to point out that WSEPO has every conceivable spare part for these low-cost diesel engines, which are also known as the 168F diesel engine. Plus, they have chain, belt, and torque converter clutches specifically made for the oddball 20mm output shaft that these engines have. So, if you're thinking about building an epic diesel-powered go-kart or mini bike, it just got a lot easier. Anyway, I did contact the vendor and let them know I would be featuring this electric starter kit on my channel, and I was able to get a discount code for anybody who wants to save a few bucks. Now, due to the typical rain, wind, and tornadoes we have this time of the year in Kansas, well, today we're going to be doing a rainy day project. And I edited this video as sort of an entertaining how-to video. Obviously, the plan is to install this kit, but we're also going to test out the battery charging gizmo that's included with the kit. And if the weather ever clears up, we may go for a quick test ride. Alright, so this is the diesel electric power unit that we use in the Cushman Desperado to generate the power for the electric drive motor. We call this thing the petroleum battery, and this is how we're able to get an electric golf cart to boogie down the road without using 350 pounds of batteries. Nope, no batteries required, just an engine and an alternator. Now keep in mind, this alternator's been modified and it can put out well over 100 volts DC, but typically we see around 60 volts when the golf cart's at cruising speed. You know, a lot of first-time viewers are not aware this is a modified alternator, and we're squeezing a lot of power out of it. Anyway, we use this dilapidated golf cart for engineering purposes so we can perfect the petroleum battery concept. And right now it has 2 engines on it, which is actually pretty cool. The problem we're having right now is the little diesel engine's tucked into a tight space, and in order to start and run the diesel engine, well, we have to use this very uncomfortable seat made out of 2x4s. We really need to put an electric starter on the engine so we can put the original seat back in place, because, well, my cameraman refuses to sit directly on the diesel engine. You know, some people are real picky like that. Anyway, let's get started. Fast forward a few minutes and we have the engine on the workbench and it's ready for the upgrade. The first thing we need to do is remove the fuel tank because there's stuff under it that we need to get to. So we'll start with removing these 2 13mm nuts. Now this bracket that holds the front of the tank to the engine doesn't need to come off, but both of these bolts should be loosened just a little bit, and this will provide enough wiggle room to get the tank off the engine. And now we can pull the return line and the main fuel line. Obviously I've already drained the fuel from the tank, and at this point the tank can slide right off the engine. Next, we need to remove the cooling shroud on the side of the engine. This shroud is held on by 7 M6 bolts with an 8mm head. That's a lot of bolts, but it only takes a few seconds to zip them off. And while we're at it, let's remove the flywheel nut. Now this flywheel nut needs to temporarily go back on the crankshaft. This nut needs to be installed so it's flush with the tip of the crankshaft, and we're going to be using this nut to help protect the threads on the crankshaft in the next step. To get the flywheel off, well, I'm going to be using the screwdriver and hammer technique. The hammer I'm using is a soft face brass hammer, and if you don't have one of these, get one. You see, if you use a steel hammer to do this, you'll likely mess up the crankshaft threads, and that's not good. Anyway, with a little force applied to the flywheel, I can bump the crankshaft with the hammer and the flywheel will pop right off. You know, you do this enough times and it's actually easy. Next, we need to pull this little tin cover off. Now this tin is held in place by a very long screw, and there's a nut on the other side that holds the throttle linkage in place. So first we have to remove the nut. And while we're here, let's get rid of this throttle thingy. You see, the starter kit comes with a replacement throttle, so we won't be needing this one. The spring that's attached to the governor arm also needs to be removed. This spring is way too long, and there's a shorter spring included in the kit. And it's off. And now we can zip the bolt out that's holding this tin in place. This bolt on the side of the engine block needs to be removed so we can attach a bracket here later on in the video. So let's get this guy out right now. Alright, we're ready to start installing the starter kit. Now if you're looking to do an upgrade like this on your diesel engine, well, the following steps need to be done in order, otherwise you'll have a difficult time getting the kit installed. Plus, we do encounter a few minor problems and we provide simple solutions, so don't skip anything. Now the first thing we need to do is install this new throttle assembly, and it's going to bolt to the engine right here. Now this engine is well used, and at some point I had a different throttle on it, and apparently I put a stud in this location. So I'm just going to leave the stud in place, but normally you would use a bolt to install this throttle thingy. Now when I place the throttle on the engine, it doesn't fit right, and in order to get it to fit correctly, well, I ended up putting two M6 washers between the engine block and the throttle bracket. With the two washers in place, the throttle bracket fit perfectly. Not sure why it needs this, but it's a simple fix. Anyway, while we're in the neighborhood, let's install the new spring for the governor. The spring hooks to the throttle like this, and to the governor like this. So here's something to remember, this is a fuel-injected diesel engine and there's no kill switch on this engine. Now in order to shut the engine off, well, you just back off on the throttle until the engine stalls, and that's completely normal on an engine like this. So if I spin this nut in, well, it looks like we do have adequate tension on the spring. Now this spring is what sets the maximum speed on the engine, and future Jimbo told me the way we have it adjusted right now is perfect. So that's good to know. And now I can tighten the nuts to lock it in place. Now this nut over here still needs to be kept loose, and we'll get back to that in a few minutes. So now we can install the stator for the charging system. This stator can go on many different ways. The first thing to keep in mind is the wires are going to be on the back side of the stator, and when the stator is installed on the engine, this harness is going to go in this direction. Now don't worry, there's plenty of space between the engine block and this bracket for the harness to pass in this direction. So with that in mind, the stator will fit the engine just like this. Alright, now we can bolt it in place. The next step is to install the heavy-duty starter bracket. Now this bracket fits the engine like this, and it's held in place by this fully threaded M6 bolt. This bolt should be between 55 and 60 millimeters long. So before we get too carried away, I want to make sure the bottom part's lined up. You see, this is a very tight fit, and if you have to, give it your best Chuck Norris punch to put it in its place. Alright, now we can install this nut that holds the throttle in place, and we can tighten it. Once that's tightened, we can go back and tighten this bolt, and at this point the throttle is securely fastened to the engine. A quick check of the throttle and, well, everything seems to be working fine. The starter's next, and it's held in place by these two thick boys. This starter actually looks to be really well made. So as far as I know, these little engines were never designed to have an electric starter, and this upgrade kit is custom engineered to fit the engine. I think it's pretty cool that someone took the time to come up with something like this. Now this support bracket gets installed next, except there's a slight problem. I'm not really sure why, but this bracket is slightly shorter than it needs to be. And when it's installed, there's a gap between the starter and this bracket. Now with the bracket tight up against the starter, you can see that the hole doesn't line up. And if I install the bolt, well, we can see there's a gap over here. So the trick that I came up with is to use a section of serpentine belt to fill in the gap. It turns out that this belt is the perfect thickness. So this belt section fits the bracket like this, and now the bracket will fit perfectly. Now once I confirmed everything fit fine, well, I ended up taking this bracket off and using contact cement to glue the belt section to the bracket. That way, I didn't have to worry about the serpentine belt section falling out, so problem solved. The next step is to install the flywheel, but before the flywheel can be installed, well, it's important to make sure the starter bracket fits this location like so. If the bracket popped out for some reason, well, push it back in before you continue. If everything looks hunky-dory, slip the flywheel in place, install the cooling fan, and torque down the flywheel nut. The cooling shroud goes on next, and this guy is held in by 7 bolts. It's important to get all the bolts started, but don't tighten them until all 7 are in place. Otherwise, you're going to have problems getting all the bolts to line up. Now, loosely installing all the bolts before final torquing is completely normal, and that's how it's done in many applications. And now we can install the recoil starter. I'm putting the pull starter on in a weird position because, well, when the engine's installed in the golf cart, this is the only direction that the pull starter will work. This and this ring terminal get connected to the stud on the starter solenoid, and this red wire gets connected to the spade terminal on the starter solenoid. Now the voltage regulator gets connected like this, just in case you're wondering. Right now it's way too soon to connect this thing, but this is how it's supposed to connect. Okay, if you made it this far, pay attention to what I had to do next to get the fuel tank to fit. So the tank slipped into position easy enough, but when I installed the rear bracket, I noticed the tank didn't fit right and I had a gap between the bracket and the engine block. So in order to fix this, I had to put a dimple in the fuel tank to provide enough clearance for this nut on the throttle. So after dimpling the bottom of the tank, now the tank fit the engine perfectly. Later on, I discovered another problem. It turns out that with this bracket in place, it restricts the movement of the throttle, and we can't have that, because this actually will keep the engine from starting, and that's because technically with the throttle movement restricted, the throttle is actually still in the off position. So we can fix this with the caveman method and hit this thingy with a hammer to give us the necessary clearance that we need. Now let's try it again. Yep, the throttle works perfect now. Fast forward about an hour and I have the engine mounted on its platform again. And as you can see, we have the voltage regulator mounted to the platform as well. We also have a battery connected, and this thing is ready to start for the first time. Now this diesel engine is equipped with a manual compression relief, and we should set this before we start the engine, but I want to see if the starter has enough power to start the engine at full compression. Well, here goes nothing. That was pretty cool, but it almost fell off the bench. So let's go ahead and put the engine back in the golf cart so we can test the charging system and see how much power it has to keep the battery charged. Okay, it's the next day and we finally have some decent weather. The little diesel engine's back in the golf cart and we're ready to do some testing. So let's set the throttle about halfway, and now we can fire this puppy up. The Cushman Desperado lives again. Let's go ahead and give it some more throttle. Over on the multimeter, we're showing a little bit over 13 volts, so that means the battery's definitely being charged. Not too shabby. So if I lower the engine speed, well, we can see the voltage drops a little bit, and that's completely normal. Okay, so now we have the engine revved up a bit, and let's see what happens when I turn the ignition switch off. So apparently shutting off the ignition also shuts off the voltage regulator. So in order for the battery to receive a charge, the ignition must be on when the engine's running. Now, because this is a diesel engine, well, it doesn't have an ignition system like what's on a gasoline engine, so shutting off the ignition switch doesn't stop the engine. In order to stop the engine, well, you have to move the throttle to the stop position. I think most of you folks know that, but just in case you didn't, well, that's why the engine didn't shut off when I turned off the ignition. Alright, let's see how much current the charging system can make. This crazy mess of wires is for the voltage and the current meter. Now the fluke over on the left, well, that's going to be measuring the current, and the other meter is going to be measuring the voltage. Right now we're showing the battery has 11.93 volts. That's pretty low, and that's because I put a load on the battery with these resistors in order to drain the battery a little bit. Once we start the engine, the charging system should bring the voltage back up to normal. Now, due to the way I have the meters wired, this time around, well, I'm going to need to use the pull starter. Otherwise, I'll damage the fluke meter. Alright, let's see what happens. And ignition on. Right away, we can see the stator's putting out 12.2 volts at nearly 4.5 amps. So it's probably safe to say the charging system's good for about 5 amps, which is not bad at all. Certainly more than enough to keep the battery charged and run a few low power accessories. So if you're new to the channel, well, despite the fact that this thing has a diesel engine, this golf cart is actually electric. You see, we're using the diesel engine to generate the power for the electric drive system. So this thing is actually a diesel electric golf cart, pretty much the same concept as a diesel electric train. Anyway, let's put the seat back on this thing and take it for a quick ride. Alright, the seat's installed, and now we can take this buggy for a ride around the yard. And we're off. You know what's interesting about this crazy contraption is, it runs on diesel and it'll run on vegetable oil. That's the cool thing about using the little diesel engine in this thing. Now, we also use this golf cart to test out other types of engines, and that's the reason this thing has two engines right now. But the diesel engine is the primary engine. Now, with both engines running, this thing is scary fast. Alright, well, the electric starter is definitely a game changer for this buggy. Now we don't have to remove the seat every time we want to start the diesel engine, which is awesome. That seat weighs about a ton. Anyway, we have a bunch more upgrades that we're going to be doing in the next few weeks, including a massive 225 amp alternator that Jason from Georgia donated to the channel. Thanks, Jason. It's going to be super interesting to fool around with that high power alternator, that's for sure. Also, we're going to start experimenting with the Arduino power management system to fully optimize all the horsepower being generated by both the larger engines and the smaller engines. And what that means is, we may be able to get the smaller 212cc engine to perform almost as good as the larger 420cc engine. You know, with a little bit of electronic magic and some clever code, that may be possible. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and consider subscribing if you haven't done so already. And you can support this channel by becoming a patron. I truly appreciate all my patrons, and I can't thank them enough for all their support. Well, I got a bunch of stuff to do, and we should probably end the video right here. We'll see you next time. Until then. Okay, so I couldn't put this in the main part of the video because it's not really on topic, but it sort of is. Now, if you've been following the electric golf cart project, well, you know our goal is to get the electric golf cart back on the road without using batteries. And as a result, none of my golf carts have batteries, which is the whole point of what I'm doing. Now, it turns out, if I did have batteries, well, there are reasonably priced range extender kits for 48, 60, and 72 volt systems. You know, it blows my mind that these kits are not commonly available here in the States. Anyway, I may feature one of these range extender kits if I can find a suitable golf cart or utility vehicle to test it on. But in the meantime, if this is something you're interested in for your project, check these things out. It may be just the thing you're looking for. I'll put a link in the video description and have fun. See you next time.